Let's see, how is my audio? Is it too pingy or is it all right? All right.
I'm streaming.
All right. So, hello, live streamers. Welcome. Hello, my man. Come on in. We've got, I know, it's LA traffic here tonight, so people are definitely still streaming in. And also internet traffic, some internet stuff that we're still trying to figure out here at the Hall Center. So, thank you for bearing with us. And I know we're starting a little bit past our 7 o'clock hour, but I appreciate you being here with us, coming in. And we're gonna explore tonight. I feel like we're gonna go to the moon tonight a little bit. Tonight, I'll talk about the topic in just a minute, but while people are coming in, let me just say a few things about the space we're in here in Santa Monica, because we love being here and we love the folks that host us here at the Hall Center. The Hall Center is, hi, welcome, called the Hall Center after Dr. Prudence Hall, and it's a regenerative medicine clinic in Santa Monica that really is one of the top clinics in the world for working with hormone issues and burnout and fatigue from an adrenal and thyroid perspective as well as a hormone perspective. So if you need any help in those arenas, you can go to Google the Hall Center. I think it's just thehallcenter.com. My name is Jeffrey Van Dyke. I have some new faces here. Hello, hello. Hi. 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 And Dina, everybody up and running over here?
No.
All right.
We have people.
We have people.
But they cannot communicate with us.
All right. So it looks like the chat function on Google is being weird tonight. So if you can't chat, my apologies. If you can chat, go ahead and type in and just say hello and the city you're from so we can see where you're from. Usually there's fun people streaming from all over the world. Good. Tonight is about a conversation regarding moving beyond your wounds. Any of you who followed my work for a while know that my work is centered around the relationship between our core wounds and our life's purpose. How our wounds send us on a path, and it prepares and develops us for the work we're designed to do in the world. And then there's a point at which that preparation is largely complete. And there's a place to move from being driven by the wound to something beyond the wound. And that's why I say it feels like we're going to explore the moon tonight. Because it's frankly not something a lot of people, I think, do, is really address their wounding to a degree that has them be functioning from something else. Part of what I talk about is moving from a wound-driven OS operating system to a purpose-driven OS operating system, like moving from a Mac to a PC, or as most of us do, from a PC to a Mac. So we're going to be talking about that tonight, and what that looks like in real-life situations, what that looks like in terms of how we run our businesses and how we answer our callings, and what's available for us as human beings in our heart and soul. I'm also going to be talking about the arc of that journey from a wound-driven to a purpose-driven operating system for your psyche, because it is not for the faint of heart. And there are stops along the way. I'm seeing the image of a train with stops along the way. So we'll be exploring what some of those stops are along the way so you can see, well, where am I on that trajectory? How do I know when I'm being driven by my wound? How do I know when my purpose is the one leading the way? What happens when my purpose is leading the way and then my wound grabs me? And I hop back over to that old operating system. And how do I know that and course correct? Yeah, so I think that's enough. Actually, one thing, Dina, if you can take that middle knob and just bring it down a little bit. I'm a bit pingy. No, next one over. There you go. Yeah, that's good. Not quite that much. There we go. I think that's better. Good. Mainly just need that for the live streamers here. So let's go into a moment of devotional space. Because what I know is that when we step into these evenings, when we have these conversations, there's something larger than us happening through us. know that this evening, that this conversation is larger than me, larger than any single one of us, but that together we are pulling information through, and that I am a conduit for that, that I'm a mouthpiece for that. That said, I know that it is our assembled presence, both here in Santa Monica and around the world, that is pulling this information through. Even folks that are streaming this later on, watching the recording, your intent to be part of this, whether you knew it or not, is part of what's pulling this information through. I also want to invite you to connect with your heart and your soul, to connect with the sweetness that you are. It's what I often refer to as a devotional heart. Someone devoted to something larger than you moving through you. And in my experience, there is a beautiful sweetness to that space. And that sweetness is really the fragrance that can lead us forward in this conversation, content we're discussing tonight. I know, too, that we have real lives, and that our lives are beyond concepts. That our lives are rich and multidimensional, that we experience all sorts of emotions, all sorts of thoughts, and all sorts of experiences. And so I just want to say that it is all welcome here. And lastly, I just know that this evening is in service to something great. And so we just lay claim to that, and we call it into being, knowing that how this information touches each and every person is exactly what needs to be heard, what needs to be experienced, and what needs to be expressed. And so on that level, I know this is already done. I know it's all happening. I know it's all held and all beautiful. And so we can just rest into that as this flows out. And so it is. Beautiful. So I just want to say a few things that may or may not have anything to do with the content tonight. I've really been in a conversation lately about grace. And it is the portal that leads us from a wound-driven operating system to a purpose-driven operating system. So we'll talk about that as we kind of get on down the road a little bit. But just in that prayer, when I step into these spaces, I know that it's all good. It's all held. It's all guided by something larger than me, even when there's little internet hiccups or lots of traffic in LA tonight or whatever it might be. And my guidance is just telling me to reference that grace as we step into this evening, that whatever is going on for you, that whatever is brought you here, whatever this topic about a wound-driven operating system and a purpose-driven operating system, which is pretty heady, called to you, that it's all good and it's all held, if you allow it. And that is the key here, is simply allowing the grace to fall upon you, to lay back in it, to do the Nestle's plunge into it. And so I just want to presence that as we move into this evening, because it's a beautiful energy that's available to us always. So here's where I'm supposed to start. For the longest time in my life, I never felt like I had a space in the world, like I really belonged, right? And I kind of would fight for it, and I would carve out spaces, and I would join communities, but I never kind of quite fit. And, I can look back and see how I also held myself apart from and held myself back from the very thing I was trying to be a part of. And that consumed a lot of my experience for many, many, many years. And I say that because it was part of my wound-driven operating system. A wound-driven operating that says, I don't belong, right? That I don't have a place here. And, I had lots of reasons to have those wounds, perfectly legitimate places I developed them from. And we'll talk about that in a minute, but basically just that was my experience because that was the operating system running my life. And one of the things I know is that these operating systems run on beliefs. That's the code, right? If you're a coder, you would write in beliefs into the code for this operating system. And this connection of beliefs, and some would be really big, dominant beliefs, and some would be a little smaller, less important, right? Some would be like the foundation to the operating system. And some would be kind of bells and whistles for the operating system. For me, something like I don't belong would have been a foundational belief written into the code of this operating system. And so you might even think about like, oh, whether or not it's active today, if I had a wound-driven operating system, what might a foundational belief for that OS be, right? What's a belief that I've kind of toyed with and that's circulated in my consciousness over and over and over and over and over again and produced experiences in front of me as a result, right? I'm thinking of a client I had that had a worthiness wound around not being worthy. And so, of course, lots of challenges with money because he wasn't worth anything, right? And so a lot of struggles with money and struggles of trying to get it, and it would go and get it, and it would go, and then struggle, like hamster wheel around the money. Because that was one of the foundational beliefs in that operating system, in his wound-driven operating system. And so if you think about, like, what are some of the beliefs that you've had? And Tina, are we on chat yet?
They're up and running now.
Woohoo! So if you're on chat, you can even type in, oh, this one for me, right? I know this one. And we'll see what they say in a second. But to understand that that's really what is at the foundation of an operating system for our psyche. And one of the things that I've really seen in working with people is that you can't buck someone else's belief. And that these beliefs stack, right? There's foundational ones, and then ones on top of it, and on top of it, and on top of it. So you might have a belief like, oh, I'm totally worth it. But if the underlying belief is I'm worthless, you're always going to come back to that underlying belief because it's what's actually steering the ship. It's what's actually in the underpinning of the operating system. And of course, when I'm working with clients, if they're holding something like that, have you ever had a friend where you can see their brilliance and you can see something amazing about them and you see them like banging their head on a wall repeatedly trying to get somewhere in life and you're like, oh my gosh, can't you see X? But no, they can't, right? Because there's a belief in their operating system that prevents that vision, right? And to see it would be contrary to the operating system they're running. That doesn't work, right? It spits it out. And so it doesn't matter how much you can see something. If their operating system is incompatible with that program, wow, I am just really running with this. I used to work for Microsoft. It was a decade ago, but it's really here tonight. But yeah, if you're trying to install a program that doesn't go with that operating system, it won't install, right? It'll boot out. And so this is what most of us are doing in most of our personal development journeys even, We're going to people to say, hey, I have this problem around money, or I have this problem around not finding the love I want, or I have this problem around not being able to build my business, or I have this problem about my health, or I have this problem about whatever it is. Can you help? And we go and we take courses and we read books and we do all these things, oftentimes to try to install new programming. But then we wonder why it doesn't work. Like, how many of these things have we done if you're on a personal development journey? And how many of them has actually been transformative in your life, right? Some, hopefully, yes, but then many not. And what I'd say is the ones that aren't are programs that are incompatible with your operating system. A PC program for a Mac OS doesn't work. And then we think something's wrong with us, right? Why isn't this working for us? Everybody else seems to have breakthroughs and I'm not. I must be defective. That would be the Enneagram 4 in me having an interpretation. Right? So that's the funny drama of it all. Or even less obvious than that is the places that these operating systems, a wound-driven operating system, has symptoms that this is the operating system. So a lot of times when people are trying to, say, market themselves, right? And they're saying, like, why aren't people responding? Like, I know I'm supposed to do this thing, but why aren't they responding? And you look at their copy, and oftentimes their marketing copy is not good. So that's just straightforward fix. But sometimes, even the marketing copy is really good. And you're like, I don't know why this isn't working. It should be. I think you have an understanding of who your tribe is and of what their craving is, and the program looks like, I don't know why this isn't working. But then, sometimes, if I'm fortunate, I get to peek under the hood, with their permission, to their operating system. And I'll find something like, oh, I remember this one. Oh, this is a good one. Oh, this is a good one. I had a client once whose mother was suicidal in middle school, high school. And she knew in her heart and soul, like, she was the one that had to keep mom alive. Mom even moved out to a little crappy apartment. Dad and the other kid or kids were still at the old house. She moved with mom. And, tried every day to keep mom up so that mom wouldn't off herself. Later, she's trying to get this message out to the world in her business, with her marketing, and everything looks good. But it's not landing. It's not taking, if you will. We start digging into the operating system, and what do we bump into? A belief that says, my words can kill. Because when she lived with suicidal mom, truth was, probably could have. Say the wrong thing with a very tenuous emotional state, off goes mom. So a really great belief to develop for that state at that point in time. But later on, when she's trying to bring her message to the world, but secretly holding my words can kill, there's a reason that her marketing was actually repellent energetically, even though the words seemed to be right. Because other people can't buck your own belief structure, your own operating system. If you're saying my words can kill, you're like, thank you very much, I'm good. We'll talk to you later, right? Won't go there. And so these are the less obvious ways that our wound-driven operating system has a challenging impact in our lives. Now, before I go into like the wound-driven operating system, the purpose-driven operating system, and how we make the transition, I want to speak to one thing, and that is the purpose of the wound-driven operating system. Because it's very easy, especially as change agents, to go, ooh, bad wound-driven operating system, good purpose-driven operating system, right? And only our wound-driven operating system would say that. Right? Our purpose-driven operating system says, oh, it's all welcome, right? My arms are open to it all. So let's just speak a little bit about the value of the wound-driven operating system before we speak to moving beyond it. When we're born as essence, just pure light. Right? I have a 2-year-old niece right now, man, and you just like, Mary was just talking about seeing her the other day, and she's like, oh, that one is just full of love, just full of energy. Not particularly wounded yet, to that I can see. But sometimes there are things that happen in our environment that are hurtful. Whether that is, I'm thinking of a client I had who had a sibling with a developmental disorder. And so all the energy went to the child with special needs. And so she kind of felt a little like chopped liver, right? My needs don't matter is part of the beliefs that she developed. Well, in order to make sense of what's going on in our environment, whatever the wounding is, whatever the challenge is, whatever the, why is this happening? Or, ouch, I hate that this is happening. We have to make sense as kids about why our experiences occur. And of course, we're meaning-making machines. And we can't blame mom and dad because that's biting the hand that feeds us. So then we have to make up the belief about ourselves. Oh, my needs don't matter. Oh, my words can kill. Oh, I'm worthless. Oh, I don't matter. Oh, I'm too much. Oh, whatever it is, right? That's how we start to develop this wound-driven operating system, is by making up these beliefs to make sense of our environment in the first part of life. And of course, once we have the beliefs, then we act according to the beliefs, right? And so it shapes how we start to engage with the world and what we do and don't do, because these wound-driven beliefs are starting to color how we engage with the world. Well, interestingly enough, what I've seen is that the way in which we get wounded, the way in which we adopt our wounding, sends us on a very unique path that's as unique as your fingerprint, right? Some of you have heard me use the analogy of a slingshot. However you pull that rock back dictates precisely how it's going to go forward. Back and down, up and down, back and to the left, forward and to the right. And so each one of us has our unique wounding and our unique response to that wounding. And it's the response to the wounding that sends us out into the world, developing certain skills, certain abilities, certain muscle, if you will, that is actually required for your life's work. Those skills are necessary for your life's purpose. So there's a purpose to this wound-driven OS, that it sends you out to go develop everything you need for this next chapter. We've all heard of the Fortune 500 CEO whose dad told him, you'll never amount to anything, right? The kid who was always told to shut up and be quiet, who becomes a big movie star in the tabloids, right? I'll show you. So we inflate in response to the wound, and sometimes we deflate in response to the wound. Oh, I'm going to get small. I'm going to go over here. Interestingly, oftentimes our deflating in response to the wound sends us inward and outward. So a lot of folks I know that are very intuitive, very psychic, very in tune and empathetic, had a lot of deflating, which sent them out of themselves and started communing with the spiritual realm, started watching how people feel and being able to tune very, very precisely to energies in different rooms. So even that, you're like, how did that help? Well, it did, right? And without doing that for year upon year upon year upon year upon year, you wouldn't have the level of empathy and intuition that's required for whatever the work is that you're designed to do in the world, right? And so that's the purpose of the wound-driven OS. It actually is what crafts our personality. And our personality is how we engage with the world. So without it, we wouldn't really have a personality. We wouldn't have this unique, interesting, quirky expression that each one of us are. And it's a beautiful thing. Now, there is a point at which our wounds expire. And that's the beginning of the possibility of this journey from a wound-driven operating system to a purpose-driven operating system, is as our wounds expire, that we actually turn towards them, excavate them, heal them, and start to integrate lost parts of ourselves, and that really brings us into the new operating system. By the way, I'm having this little note from the universe saying, you haven't defined these two OSs yet. And my old teacher, Tim Kelly, used to always say, never teach about something without defining it first. So, wound-driven operating system is an operating system based on your core wounds, fueled by reactivity. It's an operating system based on our core wounds, fueled by reactivity. So if you think about a nuclear reactor, ouch, right? We pull away and go someplace else. And that fuel is the wound-driven operating system, when we react to something and move in response to that. So if you were always told you were ugly, right? If anyone ever says anything remotely anywhere near that ballpark, you go someplace else, right? Or you might get overweight and hide your body so people don't even notice you anymore, or any number of things. But it's that reactivity that is what fuels our movement into the world. So, you know, when I had this I don't belong wound, it fueled putting me on stage as a performer, right? I didn't really feel like I had a place to just be myself. So hello my baby, hello my darling, right? I went onto stage. That's part of what drove me to be a performer. And of course, all the skills that I developed being on stages around the world serve today. You know, I enjoy being on stage. I feel very comfortable. It's, you know what, one of those top fears of most people in the world. But I don't have that fear. I have other ones, but not that one, right? And I think part of that's the result of my wound-driven operating system pushing me to get onto stage, because there I could get praised for my persona. I could get praised for the character I was versus who I felt I was, which felt broken and like it didn't belong. So, you know, all of us have something, that kernel that we react to. Ooh, I don't want to touch that hot potato. And that reactivity is what drives us in the first half of life. And while it's happening and it's purposeful, we don't notice it very much. You ever seen a 20-some-year-old just out into the world doing their thing, and you can kind of see like, ooh, you can kind of see their wounds in action as they're like out doing their thing, but they can't see it. And they aren't really aware of it, and they aren't feeling the pain of it so much because it's still an OS that's at work. It still has work to do. They still have muscle to build, skills to develop, before they can transition from the wound-driven operating system to the purpose-driven operating system. So there's a good point, a period of time when we're totally oblivious to it. And interestingly enough, as our collective consciousness is having the evolutionary experience it's having right now, the age at which people are becoming aware of it is getting younger and younger and younger. It used to be a classic 45-year-old thing called the classic midlife crisis. And it would happen once, right? What's the meaning of life? Buy the Corvette, right? Because this is 20 years ago, right? Now it might be the Tesla or the Maserati, but buy the Corvette, right? Do whatever, still not find meaning, and then go on the hero's journey to find yourself and find the meaning of life and have a purposeful life. If you decided to say yes to the journey, or go kicking and screaming and end up miserable. That's an option too. But these days, it's happening at younger and younger ages. And I'm even told that at some point in our human evolution in the future, we won't necessarily need wounds to evolve and develop. That at some point in our collective evolution, we are going to move beyond wounds collectively for how we enter into the world. And there will be some other way we develop. But right now, we're still doing the wound thing, right? And especially those of us who are over 20 or 30 definitely grew up in the wound OS era, which we've been on for thousands of years. So before I go any further, they're just saying, if I want to paint a picture of the possibility of being in awe with your wounds, being in awe about the magnificent architecture of your wound-driven operating system. All it did for you, all you developed in response to it, all that's been possible for you because of it. And that you wouldn't be you in the way that you're you without it. One of the things my buddy Tim always likes to say is, you cannot change that which you cannot love. And if we can admire the design of our life, that's a first step towards this evolution. So, and we'll talk about what's required to make this journey, but let me then go into a purpose-driven operating system and define that. A purpose-driven operating system is something where you are driven by your calling, where you're steered by your purpose, and it's fueled by desire. Not wound-driven ego lust, but true desire. Your heart's desire. That beautiful, sweet, innocent, pure desire of your soul. That becomes the fuel in the purpose-driven operating system. So rather than pushing away from something, ouch, don't want to feel it, we're now moving towards something. And actually, when we're moving towards something, it's a much more effortless journey, and it's more precise, right? If I'm just reacting to something, who knows where I'm going to end up on some level. Now, I do believe there's a karmic, cosmic something that guides that journey. But like a nuclear reactor, it also has waste, like spent fuel rods, right? And that's all the kind of gunk we bump into in the night in our lives. But a purpose-driven psyche is where we aren't caught by our wounds anymore because we've done the work to clear them and heal them and integrate them and so forth. And as a result, can be open and available to something else. What's interesting is when I see people go on this journey, there is this liminal state. Liminal is the space between spaces. So a threshold and a doorway is liminal space. You're no longer in the room you were in before. You're not yet in the room you're going to. You're in liminal space. So as you start to dismantle the wound-driven operating system, you move into this place where you're like, there's nothing. There's nothing really running the show much, and there's no motivation. You're not motivated by reacting to the old wound anymore, but you don't have a replacement fuel yet, right? And when I work with clients through this, they're often at that point like, whoa, what did you do to me? But then we turn our attention towards desire, soul's desire. And if you think about it, and it takes work at first, it takes attention. Because if you think about most of us as we're kids, man, little kids are desire machines. I want that. 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 They just, desire bubbles up everywhere, right? I walk into my brother and sister-in-law's house, and my niece sees me. She goes, Fifi, Fifi. She calls me Fifi. Jeffrey, right? Fifi. Thank you. And she's like, she runs up to me and she goes, come here. And she takes my hand and she blah, 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 and she goes, sit, right? And then I'll sit down and she'll go and get something and show it to me and start this conversation. And that's like how she engaged, but it's just her desire. I want you, and then I want you to be right here, and then I want to show you this, right? So there's times when the desire is really met, but oftentimes as kids, our desire is smacked. No, put it down, share, you can't, stop it. And so the muscle of attending to our desire gets a little atrophied. Why do you think there is this whole thing in this world of people not really having much passion, not really having much joy or fire? Their desire muscle is atrophied. Now, my sister-in-law is a physical therapist, and what I know about atrophied muscles is you can rehabilitate them. And the rehabilitation journey and the purpose-driven operating system starts by attending to your desire. And at the beginning, it's so subtle. At the beginning, it's just the most minute, like, oh, I kind of want that. Okay, I'll step towards that, right? Even if it's like, I really want to go to a really good coffee shop right now and have a proper cappuccino. Okay. And then actually doing it and turning towards your desire. And it's like this little ember, and then you add another little stick and another little bit of kindling and another little bit, and then a log, and then another little log, and then a big log. And before you know it, over time, you have this roaring fire fueling your life towards what your soul is here to do in the world. And just going towards it without apology, without permission, without anything. Just, yes, that's where I'm going. Right? And that's what's possible, and I believe that's what we're being called towards as change agents. Again, with this idea of you can't change what you can't love. What happens in this journey is we actually make peace with the thing we've been in judgment with about ourselves most of our lives. And you've seen people that are change agents that are still actively in their wound. Whatever they're trying to change, that thing is bad. Those bad people, that system, that has to change. And it's change that comes from not being at peace with something in yourself, you know. But a purpose-driven operating system loves it all. Loves it all. And still knows the thing that wants to unfold and express further, which might require some change, right? Thinking about the financial system right now and like how messed up it is, right? I was having a conversation today with Sasha, this guy Sasha, super cool guy, And I loved this perspective. He brought this perspective that the world is having a midlife crisis right now. I loved that perspective. But this idea that we can't change something we're against, and if we look at the financial institutions and say, oh, it's so bad and it's so broken and it needs to be fixed because I don't like what it's doing to me, well, now we're not an advocate of the thing we're in service to. And that doesn't really work, right? So this is really about learning to be an advocate for the thing you're in service to in the world. If we boil this whole evening down, that's the point. Is how do we get ourselves into a state where we're truly an advocate for the thing we're in service to in the world? That's the question, that's the quest. So, what does this journey look like? And then we're going to do some hot seats, and we're going to take some questions on live stream and so forth. By the way, live streamers, anytime, type in questions. Dina's got your back. She's the live stream lady. And so she'll be collecting those, and when we go to Q&A, she'll speak your questions into the room. So type those in at any point. So, first stage of the wound-driven operating system, develop the wounds, develop the OS, write the code. And that usually is most developmental psychologists would say we do most of it by age 7. So in the first part of life, for sure, right? So that's writing the code. Then it's acting out the code, right? And starting to run some of the programming that we adopt in response to our wounding. And we can see most of that happen if you imagine going into middle school, high school, college, early adulthood. Most of us, raise your hand if you can look back and go like, oh yeah, I can see how my wounds were running. Right? And so then we run the operating system. And along the way, unbeknownst to us, we develop a lot of skills that we don't even know we're developing at the time. It's a beautiful thing. And then this amazing thing starts to happen. Certain parts of our skill set are intact. They're in place. They're ready to be used. And how do you know when that happens? You know because some of your wounds expire. Now, I define an expiration date for a wound when that wound has served its holy purpose. And you know when it expires because it suddenly gets in your face, right? Have you ever had that thing where you're going along in life and something's just in your face and you're like, oh my God, I've got to deal with that. Well, that to me is an expression of a wound expiring. And then, like any wound, what do you have to do? You have to clean it out for it to heal properly, right? So you actually have to go into the wound, which is what most of us spend our entire lives avoiding, right? I mean, if you think about it, the whole wound-driven operating system is doing everything it can to not touch that, to go away from it. That's what the OS is. So it's such a screwy thing to our mind to go, oh wait, I have to turn towards the thing I've been avoiding my entire life? Yeah. And so we move towards it. And we excavate it and create the conditions for it to naturally heal. So what does that look like in practical terms? In my experience, that looks like finding what the belief is that's causing this experience you're having in life where you keep hitting up against something. Finding what the belief is that's running in the code of the OS. Tracing that belief back to when you crafted it. Right? I do a lot of work with parts, different parts of the psyche, subpersonalities. And so I'll ask the part of me holding the belief, hey, where did you come from? Why did you create this belief? Why was it necessary back then? How did it serve me? How would my life have been damaged or detrimentally impacted had you not come into my life? I seek to understand it enough to bless it, to go, oh, wow, to be in awe of it. And that right there, I think, is miraculous. Whenever any of us have the ability to do that, I think it's miraculous because we spend our whole life trying to avoid doing that. So just the ability to turn towards something that we're normally against, I think, is just unbelievable. It's amazing. And when we can see it with awe, with wonder, with beauty, that has such a healing impact because these beliefs in the wound-driven OS are judgments we make on ourselves that at its whole level are untrue, right? But they're judgments we make on ourselves. And that's why we're in judgment of ourselves so often. We don't like this part of us that's holding this belief for us. Gosh, I wish that part of me wasn't there. I wish I didn't think that, right? If you've ever had a belief like I'm unlovable, of course, it's natural to go, oh, I wish that belief was never there. I hate that I think that I'm unlovable. Even if your mind knows that you're not, but the belief is trumping your mind. You ever had that one? Right? I know logically that this is BS, but I still feel it. For the longest time, I had this thing where I said, nobody wants what I've got. After I quit Microsoft, after I become an entrepreneur, and after I'd made hundreds of thousands of dollars in this industry, right? And I had a mailing list of 25,000 people following my work, I still had the belief, nobody really wants what I've got. Even though I could look at all those things and go like, well, the evidence doesn't prove that to be true, right? But I still had the experience. And I can hear a question right now, which is, wait, but what about that thing about bucking a belief? How could you grow your business to that extent if you still have this belief nobody wants what you've got? It manifested in a different way. It manifested in me always having business partners. At that point, I always had a business partner because I couldn't fully believe that people just want me and just what I had to offer to the world. So I would like lean into somebody else and like, oh, they've got this extra thing and then they'll want it, right? And then I could believe it, right? With them, yes, they want it. And so they showed up because then I had a belief that was congruent with people coming, but only when I attached myself to an additional person. Because on my own, I couldn't hold the belief because I had a different belief. They don't want what I've got, right? And I didn't realize this at the time, but underneath that was a fear of feeling helpless. That if I kept myself away from people, I might not be in a situation that I can't handle. And then I would never have to feel helpless, right? That was part of that wound-driven operating system that I couldn't see because it was still having a purpose, actually, you know? And actually only a couple of years ago did I really turn towards helplessness. And I was like, oh, you! That's why I had to have all these partnerships. Huh, isn't that interesting? You know, and sure enough, then after that I didn't need to have business partners anymore in that way. Not in that codependent sort of wound-driven way. So this first stage of really starting to notice, where are you bumping into problems in your life? What are the actual issues? Whether it's about money, whether it's about weight, whether it's about relationships, whether it's about your purpose journey, whether it's about building your business, whatever it is, what's the situation? What's the issue at hand? And most of you can think of at least one issue that's like right there, right? You won't have to go too far to think about it. If you can think about something, shake your head. All right. So the first step is to notice it. And in fact, if you can, step back a little bit and have that bird's eye view of a bit of awe, right? Of like, isn't that fascinating? There's something cooking that's creating that experience. How amazing, right? There's must be some belief I'm holding. There's something I'm doing that's causing that experience to not just appear once as an anomaly, but in a pattern, over and over and over and over, right? Because that's the belief system, continually attracting the thing that's congruent with the belief. So that's the first thing, is to notice it and turn towards it. Next is to see if it's served its purpose, right? The aha happening. We'll check in, maybe up here in a minute. To see like, has it really served its purpose? Right? Is the muscle I needed built in response to that? The third is to forgive it and yourself. And that's really the beginning of the transition. To forgive it for holding this belief for you, to forgive yourself for all those years of judging it and yourself in response to it. All that resentment and judgment. To see the higher purpose of it, to actually bless this part of you that held this role in your life, and to forgive it in yourself. Once you've done that, you're no longer in an adversarial relationship to this part of yourself. Right? You can be an advocate to it. Then you can build a new dialogue with it around what role it wants to play in your life in the future, how it would do that, and what would be necessary for it to do that. See if it agrees and you agree, and it steps into this transformed role. Do that over time with some of the core wound-driven beliefs of your operating system, and pretty soon you've taken all the fuel out of that operating system. There's not much to react to anymore. The operating system's now defunct, right? And that's that point where people are like, yeah, I'm all right. Yeah, that doesn't bother me anymore. I don't know what the heck my life's about now or what I want to do, but yeah, that doesn't do anything for me anymore. Remember a client who held this belief, I'm stupid. She had a dad that always said, oh, you're just a stupid little girl. And so part of her, like a real deep, like, oh, I'm just like stupid, even though she's like brilliant. But I remember she told me, I went to my daughter's house and I had a question about my iPhone. And I would have, she's like, I know this is so trivial and small, but it's so huge. She said, I would have never asked my daughter for help with this question I had about my iPhone. Because what would she say? You're so stupid. But she said, I didn't really care. I asked her about it. She did say, Mom, you're so stupid. And it didn't impact me one bit. Right? The fuel had been taken out of that belief. She'd done this journey to the extent where she could be okay with her stupid self. She could be stupid. She could be a lot of things. And it just wasn't a big deal anymore, right? So that's dismantling that operating system and getting into this neutral state. And you stay there for however long you stay there, but then you start to turn towards desire. Start to just notice what sparks in you. Like I'll tell you right now, this word ministry is sparking in me. To minister to people through my work. To have a ministry. These events that I do are part of that ministry. Right? It's not like some big strategic part of my business structure or business plan. I don't have this huge funnel that these events are a part of. Fortunately, I have other parts of my business that are, and I have a functional business as a result. Right? But this is just something I was guided to do. And I didn't know why. They just kept saying, Jeffrey, you're supposed to be doing this event. It's supposed to be local in LA. And it's a local hub for a global happening. It's a local hub for a global happening, which is why I needed to start live streaming. Because you all called this into existence. I wasn't running around going, I really want to do this event series. And if that was the case, it probably looked very different, because this is a weird event, let's be honest. Right, where I talk about wound-driven operating systems, and I basically channel stuff for the first hour and whatnot. Like, it's not the most strategic business event in the world, you know. But it's purposeful, and it was part of my desire. That there was something that there wanted to be this space for us collectively to be on the cutting edge of what this means to really answer our calling. To be on the cutting edge of what is this journey of really being purpose-driven leaders, right? Spirit-led leadership. That this is not a conversation that often happens, at least not in this way, in this format, that I'm aware of. But for whatever reason, I was given the edict, oh yeah, Jeffrey, you're supposed to be a part of that conversation. And this is what it's going to look like for the first bit. So I go, okay, that sounds interesting. And I still remember it was in my consciousness for a little while. And then I got to this point where I was like, oh, I think it's about time to do something about that and actually go look for a venue or something, right? And literally within a week of that thought, my friend Daron from Israel calls me out of the blue and says, hey, there's someone, I'm in Los Angeles, and there's someone I want you to meet. And I remember telling him, I'm on a plane at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning, so it would have to be this evening. He's like, great, here's the address, meet me there at 7 p.m. All I knew. Now, Daron is very well connected, so when Daron says to be someplace at 7 p.m., I generally respond. So I show up at this house in Venice and meet Dr. Prudence Hall. Right now, we are in the hall center that Prudence Hall runs, right? And I meet this woman, Prudence Hall. And turns out Daron, super weird, is the chairman of this center. He comes here now once a month for a week, even though he lives in Israel. And he said, hey, Dr. Hall, Prudence, has been wanting to start an event series with, spiritual teachers and consciousness and whatnot. And we were wondering, do you have any interest in having a regular event there? We have all the AV equipment, everything else. You just show up. I said, oh, yeah, okay. I think we could arrange something like that, right? I was like, oh, that's really that easy? Huh, all right, good, right? And so I've been doing these events at the Hall Center because of this interesting connection of desire and the world meeting desire. One of the things I know that happens, particularly in the purpose-driven operating system, is this idea that all our needs are met, always. I remember sitting in my backyard and seeing an orange tree and an avocado tree. Very different, right? Right next to each other. And I just sat back and I was like, my guides were like, see, Jeffrey, all their needs are met. they're planted in an environment that's congruent with their species. They have enough water and enough sun, and what do? They produce fruit. It's part of the ecosystem. It naturally happens. And when we're in this place of desire, I don't believe that the desire is solely ours as this individual. I believe that what we're doing is tapping into a larger something that wants to happen as us and through us that's larger than us. That's really what the purpose-driven operating system is about. And becoming more and more and more and more and more and more and more available to what wants to happen in us, as us, and through us. And that larger something is connected to a larger zeitgeist of what's happening in the world. And when that happens, all the resources for the thing that we're moving towards are already assembled, just waiting there. Phone calls from some dude in Israel saying, hey, I'm in Venice, and by the way, we have an event venue. Do you want to come speak? Okay, right? Actually, Anthony, our live streamer, came because I went to a cocktail party not there long thereafter, and I knew I had to live stream, and I'm ordering a drink. It's this entrepreneurial cocktail party, and I start talking to this guy next to me at the bar, and he asked me what I'm doing and whatnot, and I asked him. He's this like video guy who started this whole like online video training world thing. And I was like, oh, I need to do some live streaming. Do you know anybody who could do that? He's like, oh yeah, I've got somebody great. Here you go. Thank you, Anthony. Right? And Anthony's been like solid. Supporting this whole thing. And it was like, and I was thinking before that like, oh, I've got to do some research on live stream and figure it out, and there's all these different ways to do it and blah, blah, blah. I show up, turn towards the person next to me, they're like, yep, here it is, boom, done. I'm like, oh, that was easy, right? That's what begins to happen in the purpose-driven operating system. Because we are available. We are available. We're available. When we're so busy reacting to our wounds, we're not. What we're doing is we're tunnel focused in our wounds and reacting to the wound, and in the wound and reacting to the wound, and in the wound and reacting to the wound, and into the wound and reacting to the wound, until we start to wake up and start to do that journey of excavation and move into this neutral zone where we become available. You know, and that's when all things can happen through us. And what's interesting is, you don't even have to know, in the purpose-driven operating system, you don't even have to know why you're doing a damn thing. Which is like weird to a wound-driven operating system. But in a purpose-driven operating system, you just have to know that there's a spark of desire. Because I want to. Because there's something in me that says, go there. That's it. That's the whole reason. And then you show up, and something appears. And you often, like, I have this experience where I'm regularly kind of amazed. I'm like, wow, I didn't expect that through that door, right? Door number one. Whoo, really? Huh. It becomes this sort of wondrous journey. And like, I feel like I'm just beginning, right? Like, it's just like, it's only just begun. But it's like, oh, wow. And there's still times when I find myself sort of back in my tunnel vision and doing my little gerbil wheel thing, right? And there's still areas that I'm still excavating. But the more and more of it I excavate, the more I'm available, and the more I notice, and the more I respond. And in this purpose-driven operating system, you can almost feel that you're connected to everything. You can sense how doors magically open, how invitations get made. You can sense it all. And as a result, this level of trust emerges that you would have never known before. Level of trust in your decision making, right? How many of us spend most of our time, most of our time fretting over our decisions, right? Did I make the right one? Did I not? Will this happen? Will that person like it? Will this occur? Will I go? But in the purpose-driven operating system, there's just like, oh yes. Why? I just can't help but Mickey Mouse it right out, because we love you, right? But it's like, why? Because there's something in me that's saying yes. There's a green light for it. That pathway's lit up. Why are you going there? I don't know. Where are you going to get to? I don't know. What's going to be there when you get there? Something. You know? And then it's just this like grand experiment. And you get to play at being more and more available to it. I've told this story before, but it's just so fitting right here. Oh, I got 2 stories, and then we're going to go to hot seats. When I moved to Los Angeles, often what happens for me in the purpose-driven operating system is this thing happens where I notice something enters my orbit. It's not in front of me yet. It's not like on the doorstep yet. It's just in my orbit, right? Like this idea that I had to do this event series. It just entered my orbit once. I was like, huh. Then I got a little closer, huh. A little closer. Oh, I think it's time I start to look for a venue. Whoosh. There it is, right? When I moved to Los Angeles, I lived in San Francisco. I lived in San Francisco for 13 years. And I remember I had this thought one day. I might live in Los Angeles. God, that is a weird thought, right? That's what happened. I was like, that is so weird. I was with my friend. I was just staying with him over Labor Day. And he's like, yeah, I remember that. Because I was like, hey, I just had this thought, Michael. Like, I might live in Los Angeles someday. Isn't that weird? That was it. Just as like a little wisp, this little thought, this little thing entering my orbit. And then I noticed myself going to Los Angeles a lot more for things that I had to do in my business, and developed a business partnership with somebody in Southern California and all this stuff. And so I'm in LA all the time. And then when I knew it was time to move, and I'd made an agreement about, actually my last business partner, he's like, so when are you coming? I was like, this fall. He's like, when this fall? I was like, late fall. When late fall? I'll be there by November 1st, 2013. And by the way, I moved here October 26, 2013. But I kept getting this message. Don't look for somebody, don't look for a place of your own. In fact, don't look for a place, period. Someone's going to show up into your life and just invite you to live with them. And I was like, okay. And I just knew, like, however this was going to occur, it was going to be a purposeful thing that I needed when I got there. And I also knew that if I, like, messed with it by, like, going into Craigslist and looking for apartments or whatever, like, it'd screw it up. Like, I didn't open a search for a place to live once. I just knew someone's going to show up and invite me to live with them. I was like, this is such a funny way to live. But it's like, it was true, because in the purpose-driven operating system, I wasn't adversarial to it. I was an advocate to the desire. And sure enough, I went to an event, all these series of events that led me to this event that I would normally have never been at. And there was this speaker there, and we sat down and said hello, and she said, so where do you live? And I said, oh, I live in San Francisco, but I'm moving to Los Angeles. And she said, oh, cool. Where in LA do you want to live? I said, well, somebody's just supposed to show up into my life and invite me to live with them. So wherever they live, she's like, okay, right? Sure enough, 90 minutes later, she was like, okay, well, since the moment you sat down, I knew I was the one that was supposed to invite you to live with me. I needed the last 90 minutes to like get to know you. But I have a 4-bedroom home to myself in Marina Del Rey. And a month later, I moved. That's the purpose-driven operating system. I didn't need to know why I had to move here. I didn't need to know how it was going to occur. I didn't need to know any of that. I just needed to know, yes, that's where I'm supposed to be. And then just like the orange tree and the avocado tree in my backyard, that I watch them blossom just because they exist, because the environment supports itself, that occurs in your life. Okay, so let's check in with some live streamers on some questions, and then we'll do a little Q&A up here.
It's hot on the live stream.
Ooh, it's also hot in your mic.
It's also, yeah.
There we go.
Going back to the foundational beliefs,
Yeah.
we had a lot of those. Things like, well, I can't be myself. I don't belong. I don't fit in.
Yeah.
If I tell the truth, I'll hurt others.
Ooh.
Which I know is a big one too in your tribe. I'll always be rejected. I'll be betrayed. So all these were in the mix. And then there was a question about whether...
Before you go any further,
Okay.
I want to reference something about the belonging wound, the betrayal wound, the I don't have a place in this world thing. Because I know the people in my tribe are way showers, we're guides. We're meant to be at the edge of the wave. We're edge riders. We were never meant to fit in, never meant to belong, right? And if we had, we wouldn't go on these weird excavations and excursions we go into in life and acquire all the different interesting things we do to then put them together and assemble them in a new way that offers something new to the world, right? Like, I wouldn't develop this relationship between wounds and marketing if I didn't have to go on the journey I went to and then start to see these interconnections that nobody else seems to have ever noticed before in the world, right? So that's the purpose of that wound oftentimes, is it sends you out to go forge your own path. And when you do, you develop something new and necessary to then bring back to the tribe. But you cannot bring it back while you're still in reactivity to the other, to them, to the bad people who don't want you, right? That's the piece. That's where it's necessary to move from the wound-driven operating system to the purpose-driven operating system. Because if we come back and we're like, hey, I have this thing. Screw you. I hate you. I don't like that you rejected me. But here's my thing. Here's my peace offering. Here's my gift. Doesn't work. And then we wonder why people don't respond to our work in the world, right? But when we can do that excavation and that transition from the wound-driven operating system that sent us out on the journey to then come with a full heart. Here it is. That's when things start to change. So before there's more. I just wanted to like really land that because that's such a big thing for change agents and messengers. It's like we have to be like, oh, I hate you guys. We have to go out on our journey and then bring it back. Okay.
Beautiful. Core wounds. Can you be wounded at age 45 with a core wound, or does it always come from an earlier time? This is a question.
In my experience and in my belief structure, it would happen earlier in life. But wounds create patterns and patterns repeat. And so the pattern may show up, and it may show up in a bigger way than ever before later in life at age 45 or whatever it is, right? But I don't have the experience of people acquiring brand new wounds that late in life. They just, what most likely happens for the person that said that is it actually started to move into the expiration date and started to really show itself for the first time. And it was probably
Good.
there and invisible before that.
Right. Perfect. And then we had some discussion around what you do if you're a parent and you're witnessing your child in his or her core wounding. Do you just let it play out? Yay, good luck, kid. See you in 20, 30 years. What do you do with that?
That's such an awesome question. First of all, what you do is you look up my friend Susan Stiffelman, who wrote a book called Parenting Without Power Struggles, and a couple other books, Conscious Parenting, and you look up experts like her. I am not a parent. I'm an uncle. So I will answer it with that caveat and by saying, go read Susan Stiffelman's stuff. There is a place, I mean, look, if your kid's harming themselves, of course you do something about it, right? So that's obvious, I think. But there are times when you see a kid acting out their wounding pattern, and if you can hold the holiness of it, right? If you can know the sacredness of it for them, it doesn't have to be such an awful thing, because they're experiencing it as something bad already. And usually what we're so busy is like, oh no, don't get wounded, oh no, no, you're okay, it's right? And I think there's a time for intervention, there's a time to support your kids in a lot of different ways. But if you can know, hold, there's something holy here that's happening that's larger than this experience in this moment in this wound. What I'm receiving is that somehow if you hold that, you'll show up to your parenting in a different way and be more available to your kid as a result. Mm-hmm. That when you're in your own reaction pattern to their wound pattern, now you're both tunnel vision, you're both closed off. And even if you're so busy trying to like make it okay for them, it actually isn't doing anything really, right? But what I'm seeing is if you can hold the beauty and the holiness of it, you become available in a way you aren't otherwise. And then something new can occur.
Mm-hmm. Gorgeous.
That's what I've got.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, well, let's do a little coaching up front. We've got these lovely seats. They're called hot seats. Apparently, they're very warm. We've got a microphone here. So in a minute, I'll talk about what we're looking for in terms of who we bring up here. Because what I know is that whoever comes up here is in service to the collective, right? So I'm just curious if there's somebody who's been listening to this and has something really stirring in response to it, particularly around like something expiring and maybe not knowing how to work with what's expiring. And as a result, maybe you feel stalled out or stymied or like in that like stagnant gross water in the side of the river instead of in the center of it where it's flowing beautifully. And you're like, there's something in you telling you like, I'm ready to open up. I'm ready to see things in a new way. There's something available for me here. If that's you, yep, I knew it would be you. I was like, Barry's been coming to these for a while, and I was like, something told me today, I was like, Barry's gonna be in the hot seat today. Yeah. Awesome. So, this is Barry. Hi, Barry.
Hi.
So, thank you.
Sure.
Yeah. So I want to invite you just for a minute to notice like whatever's occurring in your head and in your mind and whatever's running there. Notice how you feel, what's happening in your emotional field. Then notice that there's this third place underneath both the mind and the emotions, and this place of knowing in your body. And even that you're surrounded by something larger than you that's an advocate of you. This fourth place of knowing and support. I just want to presence all that before we dive in, so that we have places we can go to for some of the answers.
Good, yes.
So, that said, what's sparking for you?
When you began talking about not belonging, what came up immediately for me, which I didn't recognize at the time until now, is I have never fit in my life. It seems like, now looking back, so many places, and what came up recently is that I feel like I've not fit into the environments I was trying to get into, and then it went straight back to my childhood. And there's always been, I can see like this thread of where I would effort and try to fit in, or just give it up and couldn't do it because I didn't belong, fit, align. I didn't gel with people around me.
Yeah. So I like this phrase, I don't fit.
Yeah.
Because it's particular to you,
Yeah.
right? So there's general things like belonging or whatever, but I love it when we can get a more particular thing for us. So as a kid, how did not I don't fit? What did that operating system look like?
What I remember most, and I've done some excavation, so I do know some of this. I was 4 years old when my brother was born, and in my belief system, I had taken on that the loving my parents had for me went straight to him. Because suddenly he showed up and I had it all to myself until he came along. Unfair. And I felt like I didn't fit then. At the same time, being raised in a Jewish family, in a somewhat isolated in the community I was going to school with and in the people I was around, it didn't connect. And at school, I was bullied and pushed around because I was different. It wasn't skin color, it was just the fact I was different. So there's instances along the way where I felt myself being rejected.
Yeah. So this thing happens, rejection, and then I got to make sense out of it. Oh, I must not fit, right? So that becomes installed as part of the operating system.
And what crossed my mind was, I've lived in 3 other countries. I'm not sure that's the reaction to not fitting in, or just go further away from it, literally.
That's certainly one way to try to deal with it.
Yeah.
Good. But then it follows you.
Yes.
Damn it.
Because it's mine, it's not there.
Right. It's a funny thing.
Yeah.
Good. Right now, how is it showing up that it's like really in your face?
As I've shared with you before, I've got this feeling that I'm speaking and stepping into a new area of communication and teaching and sharing, that I don't see how I fit into it, first of all.
Like a topic area that you're like, really? Me?
Yeah.
There?
And also, and it's funny, when I talk about it with certain people, it clicks and they go, yes, absolutely. But it's isolated, it feels like. I think the majority of people won't get it, and I am definitely stepping out of anything I know to be safe to do that.
All right. Cool. So this tells me that there's something that wants to emerge, right?
Yeah.
Like there's really something that wants to emerge. And it can't emerge from the wound-driven OS.
Right.
And if it does, it'll be this weird Quasimodo thing that will just reinforce, look, see, even that doesn't fit.
And that's what it's been feeling like.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I've proven that doesn't work.
Right. Very good.
Yeah.
Good experiment. Good. So you're like really in front of this place where learning to honor and value I don't fit is on your doorstep.
Yeah.
And it's funny to think about that because it's like, oh, wait, I have to turn towards not fitting in to fit in? Like it's a little like, but yes.
Yeah, and because I have, looking back, I see so many times, one, it didn't kill me.
Yeah.
I mean, there's that part of it. Secondly, I've gotten kind of comfortable with it.
Yeah. So tell me this. When you were a kid or even later in life, when you didn't fit in, what did you do in response to that?
I just close off. I just step away, or I go off on my own.
Mm-hmm. And then what happens?
I'd feel okay. In some ways, I'd feel.
Where do you go when you go away?
Here, inward.
Mm-hmm. And what occurs then?
It's like home base, sort of. It felt like it was being.
Like a cocoon?
Yeah.
So for everybody, I want you to track what has been your habituated response to the wound, right? What's the thing that you keep coming back to, that you keep coming back to, that you keep coming back to, that you keep coming back to?
Mm-hmm.
Number two, what did you do there? Because that tells us what you built, right? It tells us some of like why it might have been necessary. Now, this is where we got to go a little deeper because your mind alone can't do this work. So
Right.
I want you to feel, so bring to consciousness, I don't belong, and feel where that is in your body. Really let it emerge. You might even think about the last time or a current experience where you're not feeling like you belong or you're not
Absolutely.
appreciated,
Right.
right?
It feels like constriction across
Uh-huh.
my heart and chest.
Great, so just stay there. And I want you to see if there's a part of you that can float forward. That's the part that's actually held this belief for you. Part that crafted it and that's been keeping it going all these years. This part might feel like an outcast. That's what I'm getting.
Yeah.
So connect to the outcast.
It's not easy.
Yeah. And see if you can just take the perspective that for whatever reason in your life's journey, the outcast was necessary and purposeful.
Yeah, I get that.
And ask the outcast, why did it have to emerge? Why did it have to come on board in your life?
To make sense of life.
Yeah. And what might have happened had it not come on board?
I don't think I would have survived.
Yeah. And how did it keep you safe? How did it keep you in survival?
It was my escape.
Yeah. Very quick,
Yeah.
drop of a hat, whoosh, Houdini.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And now have it show you what skills you built because you had an outcast in you.
I think the word comes up is nimble.
And now ask it, beyond just safety, if it had safety assured, then what would it want for you in addition to safety?
Connection.
Yeah. And if you had connection, how would that make you feel?
Loved.
And when you feel loved, then how do you feel?
I feel in.
And when you feel loved and connected and in, how does that make you feel?
I feel whole and present.
Yeah. And when you're whole and present, then how do you feel?
It's a blend of peace and joy.
And when there's supreme peace and abundant joy, then how do you feel?
I feel more of the same. It feels good.
Yeah. So just ask this part, is that the thing it wants most for you in life?
Yes.
Absolute peace and abundant joy.
Yeah.
And when you are in that place, what's your relationship to others? What's your relationship to all that is?
It's all one. It's all together.
Yeah. So the outcast's higher purpose has been to get you to a place of peace and joy where it's all one and all connected. Can you see that?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I do.
can this part of you see that you're seeing it?
Yeah.
Is there anything you want to say to the part, the outcast?
Thank you.
Just feel that part of you
Yeah.
receiving that gratitude. And now ask it, how is it going, getting you to sustained states of peace and joy and oneness as it's playing its role as the outcast? Is it working, not working? Does it like it, not like it?
It's almost like reversing roles now. That it's noticing if I go outside or I start to pull back, that it's reminding me to stay present, to bring me present.
And if that were its new day job, would it still be called the outcast, or would it call itself something else?
No, it wouldn't be the outcast.
Just ask it.
The reminder.
Reminder that brings you back to peace and presence
Yeah.
and joy. Does it want to have that function?
It's a lot easier.
Yeah. Do you want it to have that function?
Yes, I do.
Can you do a little internal shake on it? Yeah,
And a hug too.
beautiful. So just thank it.
Wow.
And feel this evolution from a wound-driven operating system to the beginnings of a purpose-driven operating system.
I feel that in between moment you mentioned.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a little liminal state. Yep. So, in order to install the new OS, right? So we talked about first you dismantle the sting of the wound, and then you are in this kind of like, state, right? So to install the new OS, it's turning your attention towards peace, joy, presence, oneness, with the support of this part of yourself, right? What's bringing me joy right now, right? And it can be really simple stuff. It doesn't have to be like my trip to Aruba. Not that I have one, but
I
right?
can do that. Yeah.
It can be simple. Oh, that bird is bringing me joy. Oh, I'm connecting to joy. Oh, when I connect to joy and that bird, I feel like I'm part of this universe. Oneness is emerging. Huh. 30 seconds walking down the street. It doesn't have to be big stuff, right?
Right.
That's the install process of using these qualities to steer you towards your desire, right? And beginning to work that atrophied muscle of desire. And when you find yourself in a state of feeling ostracized, it just means that you forgot, right? This part's been functioning this way for however many years, so well worn, right? But notice we didn't try to make this part change.
Right.
Can't change it what you can't love, right? So this isn't a bad part that we were trying to change. It's a part that we were seeking to honor and love, and it naturally evolves. You know, so as a ongoing practice is to reconnect with this reminder part of yourself, and as you reconnect to it consciously, it begins to take root in this new form. And as it takes you on this journey of being reminded of peace and joy and presence, that becomes a new reality. And as that's your new reality, this idea of I don't belong, I don't fit, I'm ostracized, just your reality doesn't match that anymore.
Right.
And in that place, you'll also be able to connect more clearly with what's the real idea of what wants to emerge from my business. That isn't playing this game of I want it to get out there, but they're going to not like it. Blah, blah, blah. That's just like in relationship to this, right? And then you'll find something that's more congruent for you and more congruent in the world, because what wants to happen through you is what wants to happen in the world.
Yeah. Got it.
Cool? Good stuff, my man.
Thank you.
Thank you. Give it up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. Cool. So I want to see if there's any questions about all the stuff we stirred up tonight. Because we stirred up some stuff. And we have a little bit of time left. So we'll take some questions and live stream in a minute. But I get a sense that you have a question. Is that true?
I can have a
Wanna read,
question.
Tori? Yes.
I'm curious about the liminal state.
Yeah.
And I'd
Particularly
love
what
to
about it?
hear your thoughts on how we work with that.
Cool. Thank you. So thoughts on liminal state and how we work with it. So as a reminder, liminal is when you're in a space between two spaces. So you're no longer really driven by your wounds, but you're not super connected to your passion and your desire. You're in this place where there's no real motivation because you've uninstalled the reactivity of the wound. You haven't yet installed all the desire moving you forward. There's that saying, whatever you resist persists. I always say, whatever you can't be with owns you. Whatever is in the way is the way, etc., right? So there's this place of not rushing, of really sitting in it. So just to continue using funky computer analogies for this, when you have a new hard drive, or when you have an older hard drive you want to use for a new purpose, what do you have to do? You have to reformat the hard drive, which erases it, right? And makes it available for what's next. And it takes a little bit of time. It doesn't take long, but it takes a little bit of time. And in the grand scheme of your entire life, liminal space is just a little bit of time. It feels like a lot in the moment, but it's just a little bit of time, right? And so it's to recognize, oh, I'm reformatting the hard drive. I'm cleaning, I'm like clearing it and making it available. And usually what that means is we have to slow down. It's very common when I see people going through liminal that their business starts to slow down, unbeknownst to them. Long-standing clients complete, new ones aren't coming in, right? And if you're still really in the wound, you're going to freak out. And you still might freak out a little bit, right? But I believe that liminal is designed to exercise faith. That's the purpose of liminal space. That you must exercise faith. And faith is required for the new operating system. Right? So for me, I remember in 2012, I had this guy I was in love with, and I flew home. And on January 2, I flew home on January 1st, January 2, we went out, and he broke up with me. January 4, I had a retreat already scheduled with my then business partner to suss out what was next, because I felt like something was changing. And we determined we were going in different directions. So by January 7, because you know they said the world's going to end in 2012, right? So like fully true in my life. There goes my lover, there goes my business partner, there goes my business, there goes my income stream. Wipe the slate clean. And I was just in such grief, and also didn't realize how much stock I had put in like the business I had then, because it was the first time I'd like made it in this industry, how much of my identity was in there. And I just had to sit and sit and sit. And back then, I had a business model that was run 2 big events a year, enroll people into a high-end mastermind program, and that's your whole income stream. So I only really had 2 paydays a year, right? Spring, fall, spring, fall. We did this in January. There was no spring event that was going to happen. You know, and we would usually generate a good $500,000 or whatever. So I'm looking at my bank account. I'm looking in the world. There's nothing happening. I keep thinking, I've got to do something. I've got to produce something. I've got to launch something. And every time I'd think it, my guidance would say, Jeffrey, will you add any value to the world launching something from this state? I'd be like, no. And I just kept hearing this message, we've got you. We've got something in store for you. Just chill. You're fine. Just chill. This happened all the way to July, right? And then, like a friend of mine was going to be in New York for this event, and he's like, come for your birthday weekend. And I was going to be in Michigan the first weekend of July for family reunion. I was like, I can't fly to Michigan and then fly back home to San Francisco and then fly to New York, and like I have no income, and like, no. And I had this little message. You need to get out of your environment. I was like, but. And they were like, sublet your apartment. I was like, huh. Never occurred to me. Like literally told me, get up, take pictures, put it on Craigslist. I think it was before Airbnb or whatever. Literally, like, went around, snapped photos, put it online. Within 20 minutes, this guy called me. He's like, hey, I'm a PhD student at Yale. I have an internship at PayPal, and your place looks perfect. I'm like, oh, a PhD student at Yale, probably not going to trash my place, right? He comes over. He looks at it, he's like, that's amazing, I love it, this would be perfect. The only thing is, my fiance has a teaching internship, and she needs another, I think, week or 2 weeks or whatever it was. And I was like, all right. He's like, all right, well, I'm gonna go look at a couple other places. My friend comes over and he's like, wait, wasn't January 1st to July 31st, wasn't that totally arbitrary? I was like, yeah. Yes, it was. Like, text him right now. So I did, and he's like, thank God the other places were crap. I'll be right over, right? And like, I rented it out for twice what my rent was, because it's San Francisco and premium. So I ended up going on this trip. I had a one-way ticket to Michigan and a one-way ticket from there to New York, and from there I didn't know. And it was all paid for, because I was staying places for free and making double my rent. Right? Stayed at my parents' house, stayed at the family cottage. Then I went to New York and stayed with my cousin who lives in Manhattan. Then my friends invited me out to Fire Island after their event. While I was in Fire Island, I was sitting there on a Tuesday at the beach having this thought, I shouldn't be here, I should be working, I should be doing something else. I'm at a beach on a Tuesday. Right? My phone rings and it's another person saying, hey, I'm curating a TEDx event. Do you want to be one of our speakers? And I'm like, really? This is how you get TED Talks. You sit on a beach. Okay. Right? Then another friend calls me randomly. He's like, hey, just thinking about you. How you doing? Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, good. I'm in Fire Island. I don't really know where I'm going next. He's like, oh. Well, I'm at our family place an hour north of Boston. His uncle was like a colonel, like great-great-uncle or something, like great-great-great. So there's like this property with like 6 mansions on the ocean, on the Atlantic Ocean, an hour north of Boston. He's like, come stay with us. Okay. So I take the train from New York to Boston and then go and stay on the ocean in this, like, there's the ocean, here's my bedroom window view. And then another friend, I had to come back to California, and she's like, oh, I'm house sitting for a friend who has a place on the beach in Santa Monica. Why don't you come out here? So I go there. While I'm on this trip, Max Simon calls me. He's like, hey, we've been meaning to connect. I haven't talked to you forever. What's up? He didn't even know Suzanne and I had stopped working together. He's like, oh my God, what are you doing November 2 through 4? There is nothing on my calendar. Right? I'm like, think I'm open. Right? You have to be a speaker at my event. Okay. A week later, he calls back. He's like, what would you think about co-leading a year-long program with me? And I'm like, huh. And my guides are like, remember when we've been telling you that we had something in store? I was like, oh, okay. I was like, sure. After after Santa Monica, drive down to San Diego for a day to go work with them and square away the details. And, you know, that fall we lead it. We enroll 75 people into a $12,000 program. I got my payday. But I had to sit first. I had to sit and become empty so that I was available. Good answer? Yeah? All right. Not the one that's so fun, but this is the phrase that's coming. Lean not on your own understanding. That's a requirement in liminal space. You cannot think your way out of it. You cannot strategize your way through it. You must employ faith, where you lean not on your own understanding, but you become available. You listen. You listen, you listen, you listen. And what I know when people do that is the universe has got their back. And when you're like, well, what about my rent? Or what about my money? Or what about this? Or what about that? You listen for a response to that question. And if it says, we've got you, chill, to the best of your ability, you do that. And you might have to do a little work with the... But to recognize that the higher purpose of liminal space is to cultivate faith. Lean not on your own understanding. Because only then will you have the capacity to really step into the purpose-driven operating system. Remember when I said in the purpose-driven operating system, you say yes without knowing why? Just because there's something that wants to emerge? You can't do that when you don't have faith. You have to see the strategy, you have to see the thing, which only means you can only go so far because your vision can only reach so far. Right? So in the wound-driven operating system, like there is an absolute limit to how far you can go. Even if there's external success, that full experience of success, absolute limit, because it's dependent on your own vision. Can I see it? In the purpose-driven operating system, it does not require you to know a damn thing about it, except that there's something that wants to emerge and you're following it. That's it. But you can only do that when the faith is cultivated. And if you do it and then don't have the faith, you'll dismantle it and make it all cattywampus, and whatever could have been amazing will fall into the shitter, right? It'll just go to crap. Because it requires you to go further than you can see with your own eyes. That's what liminal space is for. Thank you for asking. I feel like this whole evening was just for that question on some level. Yeah. I love when I learn new things in these evenings. And that's really like my highest intent. Like I don't come here with it all planned out. I come here with my best intent to be available to what wants to emerge. And when it really works, I learn along with you. I might be speaking, but I'm learning right along with you. And that piece, I've never known that before in my conscious mind, that liminal is for faith cultivation. That's so beautiful. Good. Anything we need to check in with over there, and then we'll...
We love some Jeffrey. They love them some Jeffrey. Jeffrey, you're so valuable, Jeffrey.
Thank you.
We are learning so much.
Awesome.
A lot of joy.
Cool. Good. So 2 things before we close. One is Tim Kelly and I just launched a 4.5-month course on moving beyond your wounds. And it's very inexpensive and very high touch, actually. It's going to be amazing. So if you are interested in learning more about how to go on this journey and how to have support along the journey, we have a whole cadre of coaches we've trained that are employed in the programs. There's a lot of support, amazing community, and it's really the most rich, cutting-edge expression of everything we've learned about this journey. So it's called Moving Beyond Your Wounds, and online you can just go to tinyurl, tinyurl.com, tinyurl.com/beyond your wounds. tinyurl.com/beyond your wounds. So that's how you check that out. And I really do encourage you to check that out. If there's something in here for you and you know there's this journey to go on from the wound-driven operating system to the purpose-driven operating system, that multi-month course is going to be an amazing resource at a very, very reasonable price to get support on going through that journey. If you want more work with me personally, what's my URL for that? jeffreyvandyke.com/
spiritledleadership.com/apply.
Great. So that's why we have friends and colleagues and coworkers and amazing assets in our lives. So if there's more for you to do with me personally, or you think there might be, one of the things I do is I lead a 3-month-long deep dive into really restructuring your business in service to your calling. So this is where I take you through the entire tribal marketing training system of understanding your wound and the application of that in service to your tribe and what your tribe's craving is and how to position your work and how to speak about it and build the messaging and branding, as well as doing some of the inner work to be congruent with the new thing you're building and stepping into. So if you want to learn more about that and have the possibility of speaking with me privately about that, you can go to spiritledleadership.biz/apply. spiritledleadership.biz/apply. All right. So with that, I just know that there is something magical happening in this world. That it happened tonight, and that it is happening always if we can just catch a glimpse of it. And that this work, that on some level we are all saying yes to because we're here, is to give us the opportunity to glimpse that magic and dance with it. And so may you all move forward into this world with a bit more magic in your lives, a little bit more dance in your steps, and more faith in your soul. Thank you so much. Good night. Bye, live streamers. Give us the opportunity to glimpse that magic. Oh, that's still streaming.